Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. I got Mike Margarella joining me here today, and I'm really excited just to talk and dig in with Mike. And I've had these kind of conversations with him over the last couple months, and while he was here in Indy, I got to actually sit down with him a couple times too and talk to him. But Mike and his wife Marie, they're out-of-state investors out of the New Jersey, New York area, and decided to come to Indianapolis. They were investing here. They decided to come here for 3 or 4 months to basically just live here and experience the city and meet everybody and talk to everybody and stuff like that. So that's really what I want to have him. He's being successful, but really what I want to dig with him in on is basically what is his perception of Indy before he came here and then after he came here, and just kind of what Indy has to offer when it comes to investing and stuff. But Mike, number one, man, thanks a lot for joining me. How you doing today, man?
Thanks for having me, Brian. Really excited to be here. Doing really well and excited to jump in.
Awesome. So I always like to ask this question. It's kind of maybe a little bit redundant on some of these episodes, but one of my favorite questions to ask, especially the out-of-state investors, is why, if you're living in New York, New Jersey, that area and stuff out there, you're a city guy, you're a lawyer out there and everything like that. So why invest in Indianapolis? Like, what's so attractive about Indianapolis, and why did you decide to kind of look here to invest?
Yeah, sure. So our main goal is cash flow. So like most investors, we just took to Google, BiggerPockets, just searching for the best cash flow markets. And we found maybe 5 or 10 or so. And from there, we sort of made a short list, and we did our own analysis of unemployment, job growth, population trends, all things of that nature. Probably all things that are already subsumed in all those lists. But I think doing some of our own analysis and digging in really made us feel comfortable about the markets. And from there, we narrowed it down to 2 or 3 and picked Indianapolis, and we just dove in.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Let me ask you, I know some people just kind of jump on like, oh, I'm just going to listen to Brian on the Indy Investor Pod and take his word for it or anything like that. But for you to dig in and like kind of do that analysis on your own, what were some of the ways that you went about that, of like kind of digging in and figuring out those numbers of like, hey, this is when I'm looking at Indianapolis, I'm looking at job employment rate, and I'm looking at all these things, cash flow rate, all that stuff. It was like, what are some resources that you maybe used, or how did you go about digging into those numbers?
Yeah, sure. So city data was helpful. The census was helpful. There's a whole lot of publicly available information out there. Then just leveraging some of the connections that we had made on BiggerPockets or just some of the local forums. And once we really picked Indianapolis as our market, I'd say our business really took off from there, because instead of devoting time to different markets or trying to pick a market, we really zeroed in on this market, and we found so many great resources, which taught us even more, such as this podcast and all the other local Facebook groups and things of that nature.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's just really good advice, and kind of dig into that a little bit, is just like picking one thing. Like, you were looking at, 5 to 10 different cities, and you kind of decided like, hey, we're just going to focus on Indianapolis. We're going to dig into that. And then all of a sudden, once you kind of narrow that focus down, I think that just helped out. I see a lot of people, even if it's not at cities, I think that can play that into like strategy. I see a lot of people like, oh, I want to be a buy and hold investor, but maybe I want to flip, or maybe I want to wholesale and do all this stuff. Of sometimes when you just like, can you focus in on one thing? It helps you just kind of strategize and kind of understand things a little bit more and things. So no, that's awesome, man.
Oh,
so what do you guys
sure.
have going on in Indianapolis right now?
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, people from around here think that we're crazy for picking Indianapolis, and I tell people all the time, it doesn't necessarily mean that Indianapolis is the best market, but it's the market that we pick. It's the market that we're devoting all of our time into, all of our resources into. So I think once you do that, and once you just pick a market, whether it's Florida or Texas or Indianapolis, as long as you just jump in and devote yourself to it, you could be successful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that's what, we talk about on this podcast all the time, is like, yeah, can you be successful in Indianapolis? 100%. But can you be successful in St. Louis or Cincinnati or Little Rock or Austin, Texas? Like, yeah, you can. It's just like, what do you want to focus on? And coming back to that of like, yeah, let's just focus on one thing now, get your systems down, get your processes down. All of a sudden it's replicable, and you can put that in any city and kind of make it work and stuff. So, but I think by focusing on one thing, it helps out a ton. So, yeah.
For sure.
So, when it comes to Indianapolis right now, what do you guys have going on, and what are you guys kind of digging into right now?
Yeah, so our goal when we started was buy and hold. So in mid to late 2020, we first got involved in the market, and based on our perception, things were a bit overpriced. So it took us a while to get started. And we actually started with a flip just based on how the market was going. So we finished up that flip. That's should be closing next week. We've got a couple other flips, and we're up to 5 buy and holds now.
Nice. That's awesome. So let me ask you this, because I think this is really important. Anybody that knows you guys and knows you and Marie and knows Next Play Investments and follows you guys and stuff, you guys have some pretty unique names for your properties, which I think is awesome. So who's the brains behind the names, and how do we come up with some of these names? So what is the one that's getting ready to sell? Is that Little Ham?
That's Lil Ham.
So yeah, how do we come up with these names, man?
Man, I got to give all the credit to Marie there. She's the social media arm of our business. So that was her idea to name our properties, and it's actually caught on now. A lot of investors or just vendors, they'll come up to me and they'll be like, "Hey, how's Little Ham? How's Parky Park?" or whatever the name is. So once we acquire a property, we look at the street name, we look at the neighborhood it's located in, and we just start brainstorming names. And then from there, she just takes it and runs, and she does her thing on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great just for even local folks in New York, New Jersey to sort of see what we're doing and put more of a fun spin on it. Maybe want to get them to be involved. So it's been a success so far.
No, I think I love it, man. I think it's awesome. And I think it's so important. I think it allows like your projects to start have a little bit of personality on their own and things. Like you said, if people are reaching out to you guys on, on social media and be like, "Oh, hey, how's Little Ham doing?" or Parky Park and all these things of like, all of a sudden they know you a little bit because of that, or they understand that a little bit. So I know one of my favorite investors here in Indianapolis, Mike Scott, like he does that too. He's got like Big Country and he does like all these little different names and stuff. And I love that. I think it's so cool, but allows you guys to kind of understand. And like I said, kind of have each project takes on its own little personality and its own little thing and people understand it, and people can, like, I guess, gravitate towards it a little bit more, understand a little bit more, which is great. So I know on that note, you say that Marie's kind of doing some social media stuff, and when it comes to like even just naming the thing or naming the properties, but then also putting out some content and things. So what's one of the reasons that you guys want to kind of get behind that? I know you guys are starting to do some blogs and some vlogs and just putting out a little bit of content behind some of these projects as well. What is it like? What's the reason behind that, or like what does that mean to you to be able to do that stuff as well?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, it's just to educate a lot of our peers. I mean, early in 2020, our perception of money and W-2 income was completely different than it is now. And I think once you just dig in, I convinced Marie to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which really changed her vision. And once you just realize what's going on with COVID and how fickle someone's employment could be, I think it's really important for people to get educated on the benefits of real estate. Or just investing their money somewhere. So that's first and foremost. And we'd also like to say top of mind to investors, vendors, private money investors, all things of that nature. So having a social media presence and showing people that we're legit, taking them through the ups and the downs of our journey has been something that we're really focused on.
Yeah. Let me ask you about that real quick on just like, I know a lot of times too, and then talking to you and Marie, and I know you guys' heart of, hey, we want to provide content to be able to help people out and be able to just kind of give back a little bit. But on the note of kind of what you just said there too, of like, it kind of gives you guys a little bit of legitimacy where maybe a lender or maybe an investor knows you because of something you've done on social media. What has that done to your business to just like kind of maybe you have a little bit of recognition of like, maybe they don't know you in person, but they're like, "Oh yeah, you're the Little Ham guy," or, whatever it is. How's that kind of helped your business out or helped you make some of those connections?
Yeah, for sure. It's helped tremendously. I mean, we'll have our deal funnel from when we started in Indianapolis from nothing has really increased. So you'll get folks who shoot us an email or message on Facebook or social media or whatever and say, "Hey, I saw that you did a flip in this area. Would you be interested in something like this?" And your funnel just increases so much. And just folks like you, other wholesalers, agents, they approach you and they see what you've done. They see that you're being transparent with, again, the ups and the downs, and they're more willing to work with you. When we first started, we were, obviously first time rookie investors. So it was hard for certain vendors to even get a call back, really. So now that we've done some stuff, we're a little bit more top of mind, and that's helped us a ton.
Yeah. I think that's really important. And you guys have really gone kind of within a year, correct? Is like from having, you've done, within a year, you've done kind of like one flip, and you guys have 5 buy and holds right now here in Indy, and you're still looking to do more and things. So let me ask you on that note of that person that's looking to invest, whether it's out of state or in state or whoever, that person that's like, "Oh man, I'm ready to get going." How realistic is for that person to start off with, not doing one deal to all of a sudden going into it like a year later, like I've done 6 deals and stuff. Do you feel like your timeline is pretty realistic for just about any investor out there?
Yeah, for sure. And at times we're a little frustrated that we're not going faster, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it just starts with mindset. I think a lot of people think that real estate is super risky, but I think if COVID's taught us anything, it's risky just to have one source of income. To just rely on a W-2 income is the riskiest thing that I could think of because, we don't know what's next. We don't know if there's going to be another wave, another COVID, some sort of tech outage. And, all these jobs that we thought were super secure, all of a sudden now we're at 15-20% unemployment, and now your sole source of income has been eliminated. So I think it starts with that mindset thing, and then from there it's just about building your team. So that's what we set out to do in mid 2020, and it took a lot of time. It took a lot of networking, a lot of phone calls, Zoom calls, things of that nature, and we came out to Indy for a long weekend for a conference in late 2020, and that really accelerated our growth. We got to meet a lot of the folks that we were networking with, and it really affirmed, what we had thought, that this was all possible. And I think the most valuable part of all that networking and even coming out to Indy in late 2020 was just meeting peers and fellow investors who are our age and have W-2 jobs, have busy lifestyles, and are able to do this, and they're doing it at great velocity. So I think it's super realistic. I think, you just have to start with a mindset thing and just dig in and just put yourself to work.
No, that's awesome, man. I love that. And then let me ask you this, since you kind of mentioned this too, like, hey, I wish we were going a little bit faster and things. So where you've done 6 deals, you might be like, oh man, Brian, I wish we would have done 10. Like, how do you, like, I feel like that's where investors maybe get in a little bit of trouble when they want to go faster and they want to like take on projects. So how do you make sure that like the projects you're doing are the ones that you like and that you are excited about, and you don't have that like, man, why did we do this? We shouldn't have got this. Our goal was to get to 10, but we should have slowed down a little bit. So how do you keep that in your mindset when you're ready to ramp up and you're ready to go quicker, but maybe the inventory is just not there for you? So how do you get your mind around that?
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll look back at properties that we were interested in or maybe had under contract in November, December 2020, and we'll look at what that price was then and what it's worth now, what it's going for on the market or what it's renting for, and we'll be like, wish we took that one down. But yeah, to your point, it's just having your own metrics and making sure that every property meets those metrics. And with the market the way it is right now, there's not every property is going to check every box. So it's just about checking as many boxes as you can and figuring out what's important to you and how much money maybe you'd be willing to leave in a deal, how much cash flow you want, and just having those numbers set out and having a good sense for you what you want, and making sure that you're not making huge sacrifices for each deal.
Yeah. So I mean, I know you mentioned that back in 2020, you guys came out for the symposium and stuff like that. Was that your guys' first visit to Indy then?
First time.
All right, so awesome. So that was that was what, November of 2020. So yeah, it was.
Yep.
That's even So not even a year that you guys have kind of been involved and kind of digging in and stuff. And I want to kind of mention, I know that coming out of that, I know you met like Paul Beats and his wife Bree, and you guys are doing a storage unit project with them, right?
That's right.
So that's really cool. I want to talk about that a little bit, of just kind of what that means for, and you kind of touched on it, but just being able to connect with other investors and make other, meet people, and whether it's in person or maybe a lot of Zoom calls or whatever it is. But what does that mean to you of like kind of just the community that Indianapolis has to offer when it comes to investors, but then even just making connections like that? And even though your storage unit isn't in Indianapolis, that it originated from an Indianapolis connection and stuff. So what does that mean to you to be able to maybe just meet another couple, meet another investor, but then also just kind of relate with them, and then also have trust in them to go ahead and do, partner on a project together like that?
Yeah, relationships are everything. And it's interesting because I don't know where we would be in our real estate journey if we had picked another market. I don't know if every market is as, I guess, awesome to work in as Indianapolis, but the folks in this market, from the vendors to the investors, are just so friendly, so open. So when we first came out to Indianapolis in November, we actually met Paul and his wife at your event, your happy hour. And, it just started with honest conversations, and my wife and myself, we hit it off with them, and we had dinner with them the next day. We kept in touch with them. I think we saw them again in Michigan before we partnered up. And we just started analyzing some bigger Indianapolis deals together, not storage related, but just kind of going back and forth via phone and text, like, oh, do you see this deal that got blasted out, or this apartment building or whatever? And we started underwriting some deals together. And, our friendship just grew. And Paul came across a storage facility, and he said, hey, Mike, you want to take this down? I was like, yep, let's do it. So from there, we've moved forward with the storage. We're pretty all in on storage here in 2021. We've educated ourselves on it. We feel like we're ready to take the next step on that. And we're doing some off-market lead generation. So we're trying hard to get some more under contract here in 2021.
So I love that. I think that's so cool. And one of the things that I want to take away from what you just said there and kind of reiterate a little bit is like, you guys started to underwrite deals like together, like, hey, what do you think about this deal, or where would your numbers be? And things like that. I think that's huge. Like, I love being able to do that with other investors too, of just like, hey, this is what they're putting this out at, or this is like, what are you seeing? Like, does this make sense, or no, or wow, this is a crazy deal. This is awesome. Like, where your numbers come in. So I think that's really important. Sometimes it's so easy to, especially when you've done this for a while, to get boxed in of like, hey, here's how I run my numbers. Here's where I'm coming up. But to see somebody else's point of view or somebody else's side of a deal, I think is really cool. So be able to talk about that, I think is awesome. And it's cool to see how your guys' relationship has blossomed and grown, and what you guys are doing with storage units. I will say, one of the things I will say with that is, as anybody that is doing storage unit investing or has some of that space that can put some space out there, or put some an investment in there like that, is definitely look into the RV storage as well. If you have room for that, I got a buddy here in Indianapolis, Tyler Hazel. If anybody, I need to get him on a podcast here soon, but he has a storage unit up in Anderson and basically put an RV rental space on there as well, or an RV storage space on there as well. And he is killing it. So that's something that's really cool, and something else to put in there as well.
Yeah, I think in 2021 or in 2020 especially, everybody got an RV or a boat. So
yeah,
having some extra land, it's super cheap to turn it into boat RV storage. And yeah, I mean, those spots rent out for quite a lot of money compared to what you put into building out a little parking lot for it.
Yeah, 100%. So, all right, Mike, I want to dig into a little bit, or talk a little bit about, so you guys you were able to kind of work remotely. You and Marie both be able to work remotely a little bit and be able to come to Indianapolis for 3 or 4 months. You guys are out here just shy of 4 months that you guys came out here, stayed in Carmel, but were able to kind of take in the city, take in what Indianapolis has to offer. And one of the first questions I have for you is, what's something that maybe as an out-of-state investor, what are some things that you assumed or had some preconceived notions about Indianapolis? And then when you got out here and actually got involved and you were able to drive around and experience the city a little bit, what are some of those things that maybe changed, or something that you thought beforehand, but you thought, oh man, this is different, I'm glad we were able to do this? Anything like that really stand out to you?
Yeah, I'd say just experiencing the suburbs and the areas around the city of Indianapolis, that was something that we didn't expect that we would like, and we didn't expect that we would see the opportunity to invest in. Before we came out to Indianapolis, we were mainly just looking at the main neighborhoods around the city, but being able to experience Hamilton County and seeing some of the other outer counties, whether it's out west or out east from the city, that was really eye-opening, and we certainly saw the opportunity there. We see the development, we see all the money that these counties are putting into their neighborhoods, and they're super walkable. There's a ton of restaurants, a ton of breweries. So, I think our perception of those places were maybe they're a little more family-friendly, but not places that younger folks might want to move. And while those counties are definitely family-friendly, we saw a ton of young folks, and like I said, a ton of development. So that's something that we're now interested in and targeting for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, very cool. It's pretty neat to see. I've now been in Indy for 7 years now, and it's crazy to see the difference of just even those 7 years, especially when you're talking about the suburbs. The city, the downtown itself is completely transformed in all these different neighborhoods. I remember when I first moved out here, like I didn't want to walk down Fountain Square. Like I went to the Fountain Square Brewery, and that was pretty cool. But like other than that, I was like, I don't really know about this area. But now it's crazy. But then even looking at the suburbs of everything that they've changed, and everything that Fishers is doing, or Carmel's doing, or Westfield, or Noblesville, like all these places out in Avon even, and stuff like that, of how much money they're putting into the cities, but how much they have transformed. And it's kind of, I feel like they have a little competition going on of like, hey, what city can kind of come out on top of who wants to visit where and stuff. So no, I think that's really neat. When it comes to just investing, what do you think that would meant for you guys to be able to come out here and kind of see the city that you want to invest in, that you want to do more stuff in, versus just like making a couple of visits a year? How much of an impact did that really have on you guys for able to you guys be in here and experience it for, an extended period of time?
Yeah, I think that was all relationships and network. That was our main goal coming out to Indianapolis for an extended period of time, was to make new relationships, build on the relationships that we had, and having 3 or 4 months to do that, as opposed to a weekend where you're just jamming it all in and driving around and seeing a whole bunch of neighborhoods and jumping from one breakfast to lunch to a happy hour. That was awesome, right? We got to live in the community. We went to, barbecues for fellow in-state investors. We met tons of people. We met our now property manager just at a lunch at an investor's house. So just little things like that, and just being in the community as opposed to just coming for a visit. That was great. I mentioned earlier that when we first started, and even when we had a property or two under our belt, it would be hard sometimes to get folks to call us back because we're really nobody. But now we get to have lunch with our contractor, we get to have drinks with our agent, and it really humanizes it, and it just keeps you top of mind, and you feel so much better about the folks you're working with, because now I regard most of those folks as friends. So
Yeah.
It definitely increases your trust in them, and I think they really understand what we're looking for, and they understand us. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's really cool, and be able to experience that and being able to do that is awesome. And I think for those investors out there, if you are an out-of-state investor, you're like, well, Brian and Mike, I can't go to Indy and spend 3 months there and stuff. Like, that's fine. I understand that completely. But if you have a chance to not just take a weekend when you come here, but see if you can take 5 to 7 days and be able to make, set up some meetings and experience different parts of the city, spend one day just driving around the city. Versus just like, sometimes I see investors come in for like 2 or 3 days and it's just back-to-back meeting, and they're running like crazy, which is awesome, which is great for connections. But then too, sometimes just drive around the city. Luckily in Indianapolis, you can literally drive around the city in like 1 or 2 days and see a whole lot of it. But I think that's something that people need to build in their schedule a little bit and try to do, a couple of those times a year. Is what I would 100% recommend, is be able to make all those connections, be able to see the city and see the different parts of it and things like that. I think is really important. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when we first came in November 2020, we stayed downtown, and we were pretty much limited to that downtown area, going from meeting to meeting. We were obviously at a symposium, coming to your happy hour. But yeah, if you could just carve out just a little more time, and maybe don't stay right downtown, and just kind of maybe stay in Sobro or Broad Ripple or something. And it doesn't take you more than 30 minutes, like you said, to drive anywhere. I don't think it took us more than 30 minutes to get anywhere. So just take some time and just explore.
Yeah, I will say too, is this, and this is not, I know it's always easy when I'm like spending other people's money and stuff, but like if you come here, like don't Uber, just like you rent a car and like literally drive around the city and drive to different places and stuff like that. So I do want to ask you, I'll put you on the spot a little bit here. When you came here and you got to, drive around and see some of the city and see some different parts, is there any area that you're like, that maybe before you came out here, you're like, I don't really know about this area, but now you're like, oh yes, I would definitely invest there. And then on the opposite side of there, like you heard like a lot of people talking about a certain area. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds cool and stuff. But you're like, after you saw it, you're like, nope, don't want to invest there. Is there anything that stands out to you on either one of those spectrums when it comes to neighborhoods?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said earlier, the suburbs, it really opened my eyes to some of the opportunity that's available there. But I'd say the big neighborhood is just 46218 as a whole. You hear so much about it. And that was on my no-fly list before I came out to Indianapolis. But I guess I was fortunate enough to be able to check on some fellow investors' properties in 46218. They were, finishing up a rental turn or whatever. And a couple of different folks asked me, hey, can you just walk this property, see what the status is? Yeah, sure. So I got to drive through 46218 a little bit. And yeah, it's a little rougher than most neighborhoods, but seeing firsthand, what they did to those properties and driving through the streets and just seeing the opportunity there, that's now a neighborhood that we're no longer scared of investing in. So that's a big one, because it's a big zip code.
There you go. Just like we'll give a shout out to our buddy Dan Perez, who says, don't hate on the 218. So there you go. So.
I think I walked one of his properties in 46218 and that was awesome.
So how about on the opposite end? Is there, you said the suburbs, was that the big thing of like, you didn't really consider before, but now you're like, oh yeah, definitely would look at that. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're pretty wide open now. I mean, 46218, West Indy, those were two areas that we were sort of avoiding. And as you know, we just picked up a deal from you in West Indy. So we're pretty wide open as long as the numbers work.
Nice. How about anything on that opposite end where you're like, oh yeah, man, this neighborhood sounds great. Like I want to invest here. Then you got out here and you're like, nope, I'm not a big fan. Anything like that stick out to you?
Nothing really. No, I mean, every neighborhood we went to had its unique qualities, and
Yeah.
I'd say it's more on the opposite spectrum where we saw the opportunity more than the opposite. So as long as the numbers work, we're pretty open to any neighborhood.
There you go. You heard it from Mike, everybody. Just wherever it is in Indy, just invest, just do it. So,
I mean,
um,
the city's pouring so much money into all these neighborhoods, whether it's, Hallville, Riverside,
yeah.
neighborhoods on the Near East Side where a couple of our flips are. So, even these rougher neighborhoods or transitional neighborhoods, there's opportunity there.
Yeah. So, if anybody is coming into Indianapolis, any particular restaurants or breweries or anything like that that somebody should check out that you would recommend to them?
Well, I'm a little biased towards Hamilton County being that we spent so much time there, but the Sun King Brewery and 3 Up right there are awesome.
Yeah.
There's awesome outdoor areas there. It's dog friendly, which we love because we have a dog. It's right along the Bonan Trail in Carmel, so you could literally just take a beer from there and walk along the Bonan and just people watch and head from restaurant to restaurant. So that's what I would say. Spend some time in Hamilton County. We actually some out-of-state investors came to visit Indy and check on their properties while we were in Carmel, and we dragged them up to Hamilton County, and they couldn't believe that was right outside Indianapolis. So I would say, shave off a couple hours and make the trip up north.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend that. That's where I've been doing a ton of like my meetings lately. I just grab a coffee from Java, and then you can walk them in on
Yep.
trail, do a little walk and talk, and you're just sit outside there. So, 100% recommend that. But pretty cool. So, Mike, I got one last question for you before we get you out of here. So, you mentioned before that there's people that you're your friends in New York and stuff like that. They're like, why are you investing in Indy? Like, what's going on? Have you been able to change anybody's mind or open up their mind a little bit to like, oh wow, maybe I should do this, or maybe I should look at investing. Maybe if it's not, maybe I can do it passively instead of being so active or anything like that. Have you changed any of those people's minds? Have you got them interested in what you guys have going on?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple folks, and that's how we funded some of our first couple deals. Actually, is just friends and peers from the area. So we've just been, I mean, we spend so much time now in real estate. So whenever we're with these folks, we're talking about the mindset behind it and what we're doing, and they get interested in it, and they start to realize how much money they're earning or even losing, having their money just sitting in a savings account. So I think for sure we've definitely opened some eyes, and I think people still think that we're crazy for doing it, miles and miles away, but people are starting to see the light.
So that's great, man. That's awesome. So Mike, if anybody wants to just kind of connect with you, if they haven't already, or they want to learn out more about what you and Marie are doing, or they just want to suggest what your next name of a property should be, where can they go? How can they connect with you, man?
Yeah, sure. So nextplayinvestments.com. We're pretty active on social media, on Facebook or Instagram under our personal names, and also at Nextplay Investments.
So awesome. Really appreciate you. Appreciate your insights here and just the value you brought to the show, man. Thanks a lot. If anybody needs anything from me, don't hesitate to reach out. You can hit me up at brian@simplewholesaling.com. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help. I'm here to help out in any way. And with that, that's a wrap for this episode of the Indy Investor Pod. And we will see you guys next time. Take care.